Hi, welcome back to Salila's Turtle. This is day two. If you have not read or looked at day one reading of Salila's Turtle, which was chapters 1 through 3, then you need to do that first. Otherwise, the story's not going to make a whole lot of sense. So take a look at day one, take a look at the questions there, and then catch up and do day two with us. So here we go. Day two, chapter 4. We're going to use the same thing we did yesterday. I'm going to read chapter, you stop, you look at the questions and answer those questions for the chapter, then you click on and keep going on chapter 5, then same thing for chapter 6, and then you're all done. Just 3 chapters left, and here we go. Chapter 4, A Visit to the Lab. The next day after school, I found myself watching strange translucent, that means clear, shapes wriggling and drifting in a drop of water through a circle of light. "The water's alive!" I cried, amazed at the tiny creatures that I saw through the microscope. The man beside me, Dr. Gadgil, chuckled. "Though we can't see them with our eyes, there are lots of things that live in the river water with your turtle. It can be very surprising to see microbes for the first time." I turned to Mother, who was sitting next to me and nodding. "I wanted you to see the microbes for yourself, Salila," she said. "Those tiny creatures in the water are part of the challenge of keeping water safe and clean." Notice there's a set up here. This is kind of how the water filtering works for a lot of cities and a lot of places, and this shows is specific to India. So there's water, the rain, the precipitation. We learned about that in the water cycle. Precipitation goes down, it ends up in a reservoir underground. It's pumped into a tank. This is above the ground now. All of this stuff is above the ground. Okay? So it's pumped out above the ground into a mixing basin where fans and things mix it up. There's some things added to it, it looks like. Then it goes through another pipe into a settling basin where some of the icky stuff that we don't want in the water settles. Then it goes into a filter where it goes through, look at sand, gravel, and then down into the bottom, and it goes up in a tube into another tank where some chemicals are added to help make sure that it has none of those microbes in it that'll make you sick. And then it goes into a water tank where it sits and waits to come out to our homes. And that's pretty cool. "That's right," Dr. Gadgil said. It is just as important to remove the harmful microbes from polluted water as it is to remove the trash that is easy to see. Some of the microbes are tiny plants and animals. Some are another type of living thing called bacteria. Not all of them are harmful, but even one harmful microbe could make you sick. How can we get these microbes out of the water when we can't even see them without a microscope?" I asked. "Well, there are a few ways to do it, said Dr. Gadgil. "In many cities, people have their water cleaned at a purification plant before it comes through the pipes to their homes." That's what that picture is showing you. "Contaminants like dirt, twigs, and microbes are removed with filters, and then a chemical called chlorine is added to kill any of the microbes that are left. That's why it's okay for us to drink the water that comes out of our faucets," I said, thinking out loud. "Even though the water comes from a polluted river, it gets cleaned before it comes to our homes. But what about the people who don't have filtered water brought into their houses with pipes, like my grandmother? In her village, you have to go to the river to get your water." "That's why grandmother boils her water," Mother said. "Do you remember helping build a fire when we visited?" she asked. I nodded, but I also remember grandmother said, "Sometimes people drink water without boiling it, if there isn't enough wood to burn." Dr. Gadgil nodded. Many villages face that problem. That's why I invented another way to clean water. I call it the ultraviolet waterworks. It has a special light bulb, an ultraviolet light bulb. The rays of ultraviolet light are like intense sunshine. The light burns and destroys the microbes so they can't harm people. So here you can see kind of a picture of what that might look like. So the water goes in with the microbes in it. It goes in there. It sits. The ultraviolet light burns and kills all those microbes. And then it goes down into a tank where it can be drank by the people. So the ultraviolet waterworks Helps you clean even the things you can't in water you can't see, I said. I don't know if I can come up with technology that fancy. Technology doesn't always have to be fancy, Dr. Gadgil said. Technology is anything or process that people create to solve problems. For the water in your turtle's tank, you might be able to use a filter you can make at home, something that can separate the trash and impurities from the water. I'm sure you'll come up with a solution that will work well for your turtle. Later that day, as I thought about what Dr. Gadgil and Mother had said, I felt less and less sure that I would be able to clean water from the Ganges for the Quechua. I heard Mother chuckling and turned toward her. I know that look on your face, she said. You're frustrated. How can you tell? I asked. I make that face when I'm frustrated too, she said. Now why are you upset? I feel stuck, I said to Mother. I want to help the turtle, and I think filtering water so I can keep the turtle in the tank is a good idea. But I also want to help the whole Ganges. I don't know where to start. Usually when I have a problem, I can come up with a solution right away. I guess I feel like I'm letting down the animals in the Ganges. But you're not, Mother said, thinking about helping one animal, and about the problems in our environment are excellent first steps. Pollution is a big problem. There isn't one easy way to fix it. I guess so, I said, but I'm not sure if I'm taking the right steps to help just one Quechua. Never mind the rest of the environment. You know, I have some steps that I use at work to help me solve problems, Mother said. They might help you too. What are they? I asked. They're called the engineering design process. It's a series of steps that engineers use to help solve problems, she said. You've already started by asking lots of questions about water pollution and the ways that people purify their water. That's true, I said, brightening. Father and I talked about the water cycle and pollution, and then I asked you and Dr. Gadgil about different ways to purify water. It sounds like you're ready for the next step, imagining different filter designs, Mother said. Then, when you feel like you're ready, you make a plan for your filter and create it. But what if I test it and it doesn't work? I asked. Mother patted my shoulder. Then you'll go on to the next step, improve. You can just keep improving until you've got something that is the best you can make it. I nodded. Making a filter might take a lot of thinking and testing, but I had to try to save that turtle. I spent the rest of the day imagining possibilities. I'm going to pause here for a second. I'm going to let you go ahead, click out, go to those questions, and learn about and answer those questions for Chapter 4. Here's a picture of the engineering design process that Salila was talking about with her mother. It starts with ask. Then it goes to imagine. You imagine what to do. So she started asking some questions. She started imagining some ways she could think about fixing it. And then she is going to come up with a plan and create something that she can try. If it doesn't work, she can improve it. And then she can go back by asking some other questions and keep going through that process as it goes around and around until she gets the creation that she wants. Let's go back to our reading now in Chapter 5. Chapter 5, Designing a Filter. The next day I started to gather some materials to use for my filter. I found an old shirt in my room. I thought I could try running water through that to strain out the big pieces. Then I found some cheesecloth that Mother uses to make paneer. Just as I was about to run to the river to fill a bottle with water, I bumped into Father. Where are you off to? Father asked. I told him about the filter materials that I had already gathered. I have an idea, Father said. While you're at the Ganges, why don't you gather some sand from the riverbank? We could try using that to filter the water too. Sand? I asked. Won't sand make the water dirty? I think it's worth testing, Father said. When you pack sands together, there are little spaces between the grains. It could trap some of the dirt and oil in the water and screen it out. Screen! I cried. I have some mosquito netting in my room. That's a really fine screen. We can try that too. Now you're thinking, said Father. When you get back from the river, I'll help you to test your ideas, if you would like. This is a very important trip, I thought to myself as I walked along. After I fill this bottle with water and filter it, I'll be able to fill a tank for a turtle. A few moments passed, and I couldn't ignore the question that was buzzing in my mind. What about all the other animals living in the river and in the other parts of the environment? I thought for a few moments about what Mother had said about how big the problem of pollution was. By thinking about pollution and ways to clean up the environment, I said out loud, I am taking little steps towards big changes. And if lots of people take little steps, it will add up to big changes, like stopping pollution from happening in the first place. When I got to the river, I knelt down and scooped water into the bottle. As I lifted it up, sunlight streamed through the water, making it glow like amber. I remember the microbes that we had seen in the microscope in Mother's lab and wondered how many little creatures were inside the bottle. When I got home, Father helped me set up a few different filters. We decided to test the mosquito netting first. Ready, set, pour, I called. I watched the water pour through the filter and settle in the bottom of the cup. The water still looks kind of brown, I said, turning to Father. This is just the first step, said Father. Remember what your mother said about the engineering design process? I nodded. I guess we should test everything before we come up with a plan. After Father and I had tested all the materials on their own, you can see some of the materials she has down here, gravel and cotton balls and sand and all this fun stuff. I imagined combinations of materials. I layered sand between the fabric and cheesecloth. I tried running water through the pebbles and cotton. Then I drew a plan and created my filter design. It didn't work exactly the way I thought it would, so I made improvements by experimenting with more materials and combining materials. When Father and I thought we had improved our filter so that it was the best one possible, I began filling a tank with the clean water. You've worked very hard on this project, Salila, Father said. I think the turtle will be happy in her new home. I hope so, I said. Now I just have to find her. Pause here. As I go to Chapter 6, you go to the questions. Hi, welcome back to Chapter 6, Hope for the Ganges. The next day I sat on the bank of the Ganges, waiting patiently for the turtle to appear. Eventually the Quechua poked her head out of the water and climbed onto the riverbank in almost the same spot where I'd seen her during the rainstorm. I carefully lifted her up and looked out at the river. There were people using the water to wash and boats traveling. As usual, the factory on the opposite bank blew billows of gray smoke across the sky. But today there was also another person using the river. It was a woman performing a ritual cleansing with the sacred water of the Ganges. Dressed in an elegant, colorful sari, the woman scooped water into a jug and let the water pour out of the container, falling in an arc back into the river. Here's a picture of her doing that ceremony in the river, and you can see the boats and some other things in the background, some of the buildings along the edge of the river there. This is so beautiful, I thought. I wish more people were here to see this. With that simple thought, I knew how I would help. Not just this one turtle, but the whole Ganges. When I got home, Mother was working in the kitchen. I placed the turtle in her new tank and smiled broadly. Salila, said Mother, you did a great job. I'm proud of you. Thanks, I said. I'm not done yet, though. If we want the river to be clean, we need to stop polluting in lots of different areas, not just the river. We need to stop polluting the air and land, too. I know I can't do it all by myself, but that's okay. I'm going to talk to my friends about everything I learned from you and Dr. Gadgil. I want to show them what I did for my new turtle, and then I'm going to ask them to help me prevent pollution. That's a great idea, said Mother. If your friends start to care about the environment, then it will spread to their friends, and their friends will tell even more people. And maybe someday, I said, if we all work really hard, I can bring the turtle back to the river so she can live there again. Together we can make a big difference in reducing pollution. The Ganges can be cleaner for the animals that depend on it. And there she is holding up her glass of water, saying, yay, the water's cleaner. So now I want you to go back and do those questions for that chapter. And thanks for listening in on this story today.